All right, I think we're live. Push one in the chat if you can hear me. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 825. Black Politics. Please hit the like button as you come in and share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. Also, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on if you want to join the panel. So the Zoom link, make sure you update your Zoom client before joining. All right, let me know if you can see my screen. Push one in the chat. Actually, let me, I'm sorry about that. I actually had someone came through the door. So, all right, let me get started with this. What's happening in the manosphere is that there are a lot of people who misappropriate titles, terms, and candidates, elected officials, unelected officials into conversations that they don't need to be in. And so what I wanted to do was, I'm actually out of breath running up the stairs. What I wanted to do was touch on a few things about what the DNC is. And so what is the DNC? The Democratic National Committee. The Democratic National Committee is committed to electing the Democrats everywhere, from the school board to Oval Office. We are mobilizing voters across the country and building our historic victories in 2020 and 2022. Together, we build a better America. Now, there was a conversation that happened last night on a particular panel about two Black women who were going off about what the Democratic Party hasn't done to the DNC chair, which is Jimmy Harrison. Okay. The DNC chair is not an elected position. It's appointed. And so what these women were doing was they were expressing a lot of disdain for Jamie Harrison without understanding who he was, what the DNC does, what it is, and what it isn't. And so, as the screen says, it elects Democrats across the country, from school boards to the Oval Office. Okay, that's their job. The DNC's role is to provide infrastructure. Okay, political infrastructure, funding, setting up offices and things like that. That's their job. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the manosphere who have not taken civics and government to understand the significance of the DNC and its relevance proportionate to the members who actually serve in it, that being Jamie Harrison. And so what's happening in these discussions is that they are acting as if you go after the DNC, they're responsible for all the calamities in the Black community. This is so far from the truth. I mean, it tells you explicitly what the DNC's job is, what its role is. Okay. Now, there are more entities throughout the Democratic Party. It also exists in the Republican Party. But for the sake of discussion, I want to make sure that we highlight all these other factors and entities within the party. Let me move on to the next one. This is the DLCC, the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, not to be confused with the DNC. The DLCC and state partners have built, let me read it from the top. The Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee is the official party committee dedicated to electing Democrats to state houses. So state reps, right? State representatives, that's their job. Okay. Their job is to focus on that and that part alone. Right? Let me move on to the next one. The next one is the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Their job is to elect Democrats to the House of Representatives, your congressional members. Okay, i.e. the Congressional Black Caucus, i.e. the Latino Caucus, i.e. the Progressive Caucus. That's their job. Those members who exist in those constituencies, their job is to organize and get those people into office. All right. Oh yeah, let's go to this one. The DSCC. The Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee is the only committee solely dedicated to electing a Democratic Senate. From organizing to fundraising, candidate recruitment, the DSCC works around the clock to re-elect Democratic senators and send new leaders to Washington who will move our country forward. That's their job. Their job is to, by and large, send existing members back to Washington and send new members to Washington, okay? That's their only job. I think what's happening, actually, let me get to this next one. This is the DGA. The Democratic Governors Association is an independent voluntary political organization organized to support Democratic governors and candidates across the nation, okay? And so what the DGA does, no different than what the DNC does, but they just do it for governors. That's their main laser focus. Democratic Mayors Association, the DMA. The DMA is comprised of mayors in cities of 30,000 or more, a diverse coalition of innovative leaders who get things done. Okay, that's their job. Their job is to focus on these are very important definitions in terms to understand when you talk about politics in the manosphere. None of these organizations are responsible for the political conditions on the ground in your area. So if you live in a state like Indiana, you can't complain about what the Democrats ain't doing when your state is controlled by Republicans from the governor's mansion all the way down to the legislature. This is very important to understand so that we're not actually focusing on the White House when all of your problems exist at the state level. The city, state, and Fed are different. The city has its own apparatus, the state has its own apparatus, and the Fed and the national have their own apparatus. When you focus on Washington, but don't acknowledge what's going on at the state level, that becomes a disingenuous argument. If you live in a state like Indiana, you cannot complain about what Vice President Harris is doing and isn't doing in relation to what's going on in your own state, because she's not elected in your state. She has nothing to do with your state. The problems that exist in your state existed long before she got to the White House and before she was probably even elected as a senator. Okay. The Democratic National Committee has nothing to do with what goes on in the state of Indiana, which is a conservative state and has been for quite some time. And no one seems to really want to acknowledge the separation of duties and roles within government, but want to have these sort of shallow conversations late at night about who's doing what and what ain't going down with the Democrats, but has absolutely nothing to say about Republicans. When you go to their channels, it is content filled with anti-democratic rhetoric, talking points, hee ha-has, heckling, but want to be taken seriously. Wondering about what two Black women are piping off about at a DNC gathering. That should be the least of your worries. Your problems are confined within the borders of your state. And if you don't acknowledge this, then the conversation is not going to go anywhere, because you have people who don't know any better that are listening to these panel discussions, and they think that what you're saying is factual because you're on a panel. And depending on who the content creator is, they think if they allow you on the panel, then it must be true and it must be legitimate. And so the purpose of the stream is to provide clarity around what the DNC is and what it isn't. Going after Jamie Harris and asking about what Democrats ain't, why haven't they done anything? We've been voting for 60 years. Okay, so what's the alternative to the Democrats? What's the alternative? Because if all of your problems are being stymied by Republicans, what's the alternative to the Democrats? And why does all of the questioning of the integrity of the political process only exist with the Democrats, but not with Republicans? Well, I want universal health care. Really? You want universal health care, but the only party that's stopping it happens to be Republicans. It's not Democrats that are doing this. It has nothing to do with the DNC. It has nothing to do with Jamie Harrison. It has nothing to do with Kamala Harris. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. But if you allow this sort of rhetoric on your panels, then people, without being challenged or pushed back against, then people think that it's legitimate. These are very illegitimate arguments. And what we have are people in this space who want to operate from a position of illegitimacy. No facts, no data to back up anything they're talking about, no historic grounding. And people want to say, well, Dems haven't done anything, but we've been down this road before. We've already covered everything from the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure bill. We've covered what the Obama administration has done. And in fact, the Biden administration has basically kept all of its promises. They promised to get a Black woman down up to the Supreme Court. They've done that, whether you like Ketanji Brown Jackson or not. They've provided HBCUs with close to $12 billion so far. I know some people want to say Trump saved the HBCUs, but we've debunked this already, probably about maybe 4 times just this year alone. How many times do we have to keep going over this in this space before people get it? We've been covering this probably since 2018, 2019. Again, if you live in a conservatively controlled state, your problems have nothing to do with the people on screen. not Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris, not Jamie Harrison. It doesn't have anything to do with Democrats. If you're on a panel and you're making these comments and no one's pushing back, the credibility and accreditation of the panel and the space and the channel that allows it has to be questioned. There are too many people in the space who like to spread misinformation on purpose as a way to filibuster what they don't know. Okay. This has been a persistent issue within the manosphere. All these attacks against the DNC or the Democratic Party or people who are considered to be on the left or people who consider themselves to be liberal, it's always an angst against them, but never any sort of circumstantial evidence to provide, legitimacy to their argument. So the same people who want to say that Deion Sanders and the gynocracy and the HBCUs messed him up are the same people who want to uphold 2 Black women as, considerable, points of reference as to what may be coming down the pike for the Democratic Party. These are very strange conversations to have. Because what value does that conversation really bring? What's the legitimacy of it? What are we really talking about? What are you hoping to get from that conversation? What comes out of that? If you don't know who the candidates are and who the players are within the game, then how are you actually having a conversation about it? Freeman's Journal says it's a red herring. The link is in the chat. You could always click on it and come up. You could always come up. I will give you to 210. You can come up. Now, let me also bring this up as well. Let me share my screen real quick. Let me know you can see my screen. Yeah, let me know you can see my screen. All right, cool. Got a confirmation. This is a map of SWAC, okay? Southwestern Athletic Conference. This was the conference that Deion Sanders coached in for Jackson State. Now, again, comments were made about whether or not HBCUs had the funding or not. We've already covered that HBCUs were underfunded by over $12 billion, even close to $16 billion, right? These are all conservative states. Arkansas, governed by conservatives, top to bottom. Louisiana, governed by conservatives, top to bottom. Texas, governed by conservatives. Okay, Mississippi, governed by conservatives. Alabama, governed by conservatives. Florida, governed by conservatives. Now, the comment that was made was whether or not Democrats had any control over this. When we talk about conservative controlled states, we're talking about the apparatus of the state itself is governed by conservatives, people who don't believe in fiscal spending for land granted universities and colleges that were historically Black, which is why they lack the funds. If you don't know what SWAC is, you want to have a conversation about Deion Sanders, I think you should do your homework first. You should really, really do your homework. All of these schools have been underfunded by their constituent states. This is on record. So you see Deion Sanders cutting the grass and Ed Reed out there picking up trash and stuff like that. All these schools have been underfunded. Whether you want to think HBCUs are run by gynocracies is immaterial to the reality that they have been underfunded by their states to the tunes of billions of dollars. And so the idea, again, that HBCUs should gather up all their monies and fund Deion Sanders, this is a pipe dream. It's what we call nigger logic. It's like a shade tree mechanic. Don't really know how to fix the vehicle, but want to be up under the engine, or up under the hood, trying to fix the engine. You don't know how the system works, and so what you do is you project what you think something should be when that's not the way the process works. If these schools had the funding that was necessary, they wouldn't be in the positions that they're in. Let me see, it's 2:10. Where's Freeman's Journal? Where's Freeman's Journal? Thought Buddy was supposed to be coming up here. Anyways, it's 2:11. He's not up here, so I don't think he'll be joining us. Might be a good thing. Yeah, taking like 3 days to change oil on cars and, needing to jack a car up just to change the battery. That's the mentality that is in this space. A lot of people want to be involved in these conversations and they don't necessarily understand um, how things work. They just don't get it. And you don't have to be an HBCU graduate to understand all of these the significance of how things work at the basic level. Okay. Let me share one last link and then I'm going to get out of here because I don't see Freeman's Journal coming up here. Um, all right, let me know when you can see my screen. Oh, I'm talking and the mic is muted. Sorry. This is from SWAC.org. ESPN reaches new agreement with Meek and SWAC to continue SWAC Challenge kickoff and Cricket Celebration Bowl. This is from 2021. ESPN signed a new 6-year agreement with Meek and SWAC that extends both SWAC Challenge kickoff and the Cricket Celebration Bowl, solidifying its continued support of the tradition, legacy, and values of historically Black colleges and universities. Quote, "We are thrilled to continue our relationship with these two incredible conferences," said Clint Overby, Vice President of ESPN Events. The Cricket SWAC Challenge kickoff and Celebration Bowl have been mainstays of our event roster, and we've seen tremendous growth for these storied games. Okay. The Cricket Meek SWAC Challenge kickoff began in 2005. So this has already been going on and is now annually scheduled during ESPN's Week 0 college football programming. This year's matchup on Saturday, August 28th at Center Park Stadium in Atlanta, will feature North Carolina Central versus Alcorn State in prime time on ESPN. Okay. This new deal reaffirms ESPN's commitment to supporting HBCUs college football in real and meaningful way. So John T. Grant, Executive Director of the Kickoff and Celebration Bowl, positioning the SWAC Challenge kickoff to Week 0 brings national focus to Atlanta for the opening weekend of the college football season, as well as the start of the bowl season and the Cricket Celebration Bowl. We're looking forward to starting and ending the season with high energy, exciting 2 games. This was in 2021. So they already had the quote unquote eyeballs that some people want to lament about, eyeballs, right? They already have a contract. So this idea that if you just load up StreamYards and put somebody out there with a camera, that would solve all of your issues. Again, we have a lot of people who just don't know what's going on because they just come up with their own ideas, even though they're not involved in the process and don't really and don't necessarily care. All right. Let me get to the next one. All right, let me know you can see my screen. All right. This is from SWAC again, okay? PepsiCo announces largest SWAC partnership to date in expanded deal. PepsiCo is expanding its relationship with the Southwestern Athletic Conference, more than doubling its investment in the premier HBCU conference as it enters a 6-year title partnership as the first ever exclusive beverage, sports performance product, and salty snack sponsor of SWAC football, basketball, Olympic sports, and esports through 2029. This is a 6-year deal. Building on its 2020 commitment and as an exclusive beverage partner, the new title sponsorship deal makes PepsiCo the main carbonated soft drink, non-carbonated soft drink, sports performance drink, and ready-to-eat snack foods provider of the conference, reaching 12 schools across the South in 6 states. With 8 brands engaged, the deal leverages the power of PepsiCo's diverse portfolio, mirroring the company's overall approach to professional sports partnerships in a continued show of support for HBCUs. PepsiCo's brands will show up in an even bigger and better way on the sidelines, in-game, on broadcast, and more throughout each sports season and during the championship events, including presence across the SWAC Classics. Fans can expect to see Pepsi Zero, Sugar, Gatorade, Doritos, etc. PepsiCo's expanded enterprise-wide partnership with SWAC reinforces the value of our increased investment in HBCUs and commitment to uplifting diverse talent as part of our efforts to amplify equity within our business and communities, said Kent Montgomery, Senior Vice President, Industry Relations and Multicultural Development, PepsiCo. This is a DEI initiative. Uniting our powerhouse brands across the PepsiCo portfolio to genuinely connect with HBCUs offers a unique opportunity to elevate the culture, bring authentic and engaging experiences to fans, and provides valuable career development opportunities to invest in students' futures. As part of the deal, PepsiCo will continue to amplify and support HBCUs with on-site mentorship, recruitment opportunities. A portion of the yearly investment will go directly to SWAC schools to fund scholarships that open the door to greater economic opportunities for students. The SWAC is pleased to partner with PepsiCo and its impressive portfolio of brands to enhance our student and fan experience, starting with this season with much needed improvements across the conference, said SWAC Commissioner Dr. Charles McClellan. We're excited to have PepsiCo and its iconic brands on board with us for the next 6 years. We continue to work together to uplift and bring new opportunities to our communities. Okay. So what you're talking about here is PepsiCo, who's an $86 billion revenue generating enterprise. You have the ESPN deal that goes into 2029. Okay. Well, actually 2026, sorry. And then you have this PepsiCo deal that goes into 2029. Deion Sanders is not a part of that conference anymore. This was already being worked upon prior to Deion. But you got to bring eyeballs. It's all about eyeballs. Oh, really? Is it really? So what are we talking about here? It's not about what you think, it's about what you can prove. SWAC has a deal with Pepsi, SWAC has a deal with ESPN. That's already been settled. So the eyeball argument doesn't make any sense. You're not just going to show up with an iPad or an iPhone and try to record a game and then put it through StreamYards and then talk about bringing eyeballs. They already had eyeballs. The bans itself brings eyeballs. That's why the NFL uses the bans, okay? In fact, football culture, college football culture is big on bans. That brings, eyeballs to itself. It's a culture within itself. All I'm saying here is this. Let's put all of the evidence on the table and let's examine it together and let's figure out what's legitimate and what's not legitimate. Too often we're having conversations in this space about things that we don't really know about and don't understand, but want to have all of these quote unquote expertise suggestions to schools that far outweigh your intellectual and social capital as we see it, as we know it. That's just facts. You didn't go to an HBCU, but you're so concerned about bringing money to HBCUs. You're so concerned about bringing money to HBCUs. Why don't you donate to an HBCU of your choice? And if you're not going to do that, you can at least donate to the United Negro College Fund, which a lot of students actually leverage to get into school. Link is in the chat. We waited for Freedman's Journal, never showed up. I'll give him 60 more seconds. If I don't see him, I will peel up out of here. Gray Fox, I think that the argument was that, Jackson State screwed Deion Sanders out of money. But if that was the case, why didn't Deion Sanders just hire a lawyer? Any lawyer would have taken that on if what he's saying was legitimate. In fact, the state of Mississippi has an attorney general. They could have easily had looked into this. They also have a state auditor. State auditor could have easily had put a request in for the last the last season that Deion was there. It could have ordered all the records to come in. That's what auditors do. Deion never requested it, at least to my knowledge publicly. He's never requested it. He's never hired a lawyer to go after the money that he claims was taken from him. If you had a legitimate claim, then that would have been an easy victory, but you didn't do that, right? And so so to your point, Gray Fox, or to the question, what's the fuss about Deion leaving to CU? I don't have a fuss about that. I just have a question about people in the space who try and make it seem as if Deion Sanders, that HBCUs screwed Deion Sanders out of money, and that's the way HBCUs operate. That's not true, right? That's just not true, because if that was the case, the coaches for JSU's basketball and women's basketball and men's basketball would have left already. That's not the case. In fact, they're not even co-signing what Deion's saying. To my knowledge, from all the interviews I saw, they're not co-signing anything that he's saying. Yeah, Gray Fox, I'm just, I know SWAC already deals with PepsiCo and ESPN. I'm just putting emphasis behind the deal because that part is never talked about, right? The idea that some folks had was that if you just started streaming, to YouTube, that would bring eyeballs. But that doesn't make any sense. That never made any sense to us about the eyeballs argument because they already had a contract with ESPN. Right? I'm just reading it, and I probably should have mentioned the date, but I'm just reading it so that people have a clear understanding as to what was said and what is actually etched in stone. See, I'm reading from the source itself. They're not reading from the source. They're just making up stuff and we can't really validate their sources because no one knows what they're talking about. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. I think that, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the space who are hell-bent on pushing a narrative that is very faulty and on shaky grounds at best about things that are just not true. I'm not sure where they're getting this from. I heard it last night about what the DNC, these two Black women going after Jamie Harrison as if that really provides any sort of substance as to the climate within politics. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense as to why anybody would want to latch on to something like that as a source. I mean, it's the equivalent of saying, because people stormed the Capitol, that is the reflection of, let's say, Mitt Romney or something like that. Or, what does that say about Mitt Romney? What does that mean about, the GOP? No, it doesn't really say anything. It's not really, there's no way to correlate that to anything. It doesn't make any sense. All right, got. All right, I'll give about 2 more minutes, and if I don't see any of these guys show up, then I'll just close out. But I just want to make it clear that these false accusations of what you think the Democratic Party is and its subcommittees and sub brands and affiliates, there needs to be some clarity behind it as to what folks are trying to attack. I know some people like to see drama when it comes to people going after Democrats, but don't have anything to say about Republicans, even though they themselves would actually go over there and vote, for a Republican if given the opportunity, and expect that Democrats would do everything while they don't have to give nothing to the party itself. It's really strange. Gen Z 214 says, "What's up, Mike? What do you think about the Dallas mayor switching from Democrat to Republican?" It wouldn't be the first time. Okay, that's not the first time. We saw that in North Carolina some months ago with a her name slips my mind right now, but she switched from Democrat to Republican and gave these guys a majority. That doesn't really mean anything, because still, Black folks still control the most major cities in the country right now. Karen Bass, LA, the brother from Houston, damn, how his name slips my mind right now, the mayor of Houston, and then the mayor of Chicago, the mayor of New York, and then you have the mayor of Atlanta. And if you want to include Marion Bowser, you can add her in there as well. Mayor Adams in New York. So I don't necessarily put too much emphasis behind, the Dallas mayor switching from Democrat to Republican. There's always going to be that there's always going to be, one of those folks that try to become an opportunist and go over to the other side. That doesn't really mean anything, because if you take into consideration, like, Michael Steele was a Republican and voted for Biden. He also voted for Obama too, if I remember correctly. So it doesn't really mean much to me. Yeah, Mayor Turner in Houston. Yeah, thank you for that, Rainy. That's exactly his name. Ronan Unsung says, wasn't that the GA state rep, Maynard? I'm not sure what you're referring to, but if you could add some clarity to it, I got a better understanding of what you're saying. Yeah, I know there's a lot of talk about, the mayor of Dallas switching over, but I don't understand the significance of it, though, because it's not as if suddenly you're going to get behind him. I'm not saying you, I'm saying in general. I don't think that a lot of these guys are going to get behind, the mayor of Dallas, to do what? He's not running for governor. I can tell you that much. Not in that state. Yeah, Ronan, I think that was she was from North Carolina. I can't remember her name right now. Let me see if I can find her name real quick before I close out. Yeah, State Rep Trisha Cotham. Okay, Trisha Cotham in North Carolina. She switched from Democrat to GOP back in April and gave him a supermajority. But you have to remember that once you go to that side, you can't get away from it, right? You have to stay over there. Like once you go over there, that's it. Look at what's happening with Michael Steele, just as another example. Even if he wanted to run for office again, he's pretty much dead meat. He can't go anywhere. Look at the other guy, the other brother, Vernon Jones in Georgia. I think he switched from Democrat to Republican, and look at where he is right now. Nowhere. Can't go anywhere. And so that's why I don't really worry and put too much emphasis behind, folks switching from, Democrat to Republican, anything like that, because it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. Once you go over there, you're pretty much, your career is over. You'll never get support, and you'll always be as known as a has-been. And so, yeah, Vernon is a grifter, but it's an example of where is his career? can't go anywhere. I think you may be referring to Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know. I know she left the Democratic Party, but I'm not sure if she became a registered Republican. But she left the Democratic Party for different reasons than what many would allude to. She could not run on the ticket. That's just the reality. She didn't have a shot at winning anything on that ticket. And I wouldn't necessarily call her a grifter, but I would definitely think that her politics are not consistent with the party's rhetoric or the party's the party's message. It's not consistent. She has great points, but it's just not something that Democrats are all about. She could have easily been a VP for Biden, but I don't know. I don't know if her politics gel very well with the party itself. And I don't think Republicans really want her either. It's hard when you're that when you're like Tulsi Gabbard. There's very few places you can go. She's a great libertarian candidate, but she's not necessarily a libertarian. And she doesn't fit within the Green Party as a third party candidate. And she's definitely not a Democrat anymore. I don't think she has very many options to choose from in order to, maneuver within the national politic. Not really much you can do. She has great talking points, though. She has a lot of strong messages to deliver, but it's just who are you talking to? Who's your base? She spends a lot of time in New Hampshire, but New Hampshire can kind of go either way. Although they're moving more towards the right now than what they ever were before. They're talking about putting up a wall between Massachusetts and New Hampshire to keep Black folks in Massachusetts from coming up there. Really strange. Primarily because New Hampshire is completely dependent upon Massachusetts to survive. If you cut off Massachusetts, the state will die overnight. All right, let me get out of here, man, because I don't see Freeman's Journal coming up, and I don't think he wants to smoke. Thank you all for joining us, and please hit the like button on the way out and share that video if possible.